Welcome, everyone. It is lovely to see you, literally. Steve and I have been so excited about this. We started speaking about it 4 months ago,
Yeah.
but really, I met Steve the first time back in 2014 when he was on stage at the London conference. And he was speaking with his partner Tony, and I just love listening to them. There was something in the feeling that they had in the way they were sharing that really touched me. Both of you touched me. And I was pretty new to the principles at the time, and so it was very much about the feeling for me. And I was so new that I didn't even dare to think that one day we'd be teaching together, but here we are. So I'm delighted. I just wanted to say some practical things. Steve and I are going to be speaking for who knows how long we'll be speaking, but then we will open up for questions as well. But we have some things we wanted to share with you, and then we will open up and would love to hear from all of you. So, welcome, welcome. Steve.
Yeah. Um, I'm really excited to be here with you all. And I'm really excited when Natasha and I came online. It was like, my goodness, it's here already. It just seems to be like forever. We were kind of, um, it felt quite instant. We're just saying, how did this come around? And Natasha sitting on a webinar that I was doing, and afterwards it was like, my goodness, we need to get together and do something. Should we do something? And especially about love. And my usual thing is, okay, let's have a conversation and just see. Because I think there's something very special in not shutting down with the mind, but just having a conversation and just seeing what happens in that flow. And the two of us became really quiet. And it was like, okay, so there's something here for us to do. So I'm really excited that none of this is planned. We're just really going to go with the flow. In fact, we had a quick check-in the other day and talked about everything other than what tonight was going to be. But there was two words that I took from uh, the conversation that we had, and it was simplicity and impersonal. And then the rest was a big blank page. And I say to Natasha, I say, Sid would be so pleased with us that we've left so much space in between what we're talking about. And so I've been reflecting on those words because I found that since almost 13 years ago, when I first came around the three principles, I was anything but living in simplicity. My mind seemed to be so busy that was always somewhere for me to get to. It always looked like if I did something, if I worked harder, if I meditated harder, then simplicity would be something that I would get. But what I found was that we were actually born in a state of simplicity. As sure as our heart beats, simplicity is there too. And that was a really night and day different from how I used to see life before. But then I got to see that it wasn't just me. Have you ever done that when you have a series of thinking, you just think that you're the only one that thinks that way? And then you start listening to other people and it's like, me too. You do things like that too. And that was a biggie because I think when we become very personal with ourselves and try to understand, we seem to close down rather than open up. And that was very different when I started looking in the direction of health. And so for me, I'm really excited to see with simplicity where we can take this. I don't know if you want me to build on this, Natasha, or you. Okay, okay. So what I found when I was sitting and reflecting on this word simplicity. And what did it mean to love? And that really took me to the impersonal place, where my mind stopped. And what I saw in those moments, that they hold the power, the insight to create infinite love. And that's how we're really designed, to be moment to moment, not to hold ourselves prisoner from the past or the future, but to realize that we are having original thought every moment. As someone who studied psychology, for me, that was a very difficult thing to, I always had a yeah, but. I always had a questioning to go with it. But what I found is that the more I look in the direction of the impersonal, there just seems to be a quiet. There seems to be an awareness. And that awareness seems to waken a truth inside of me. It holds well-being. It holds to forgive. And there is nothing that we can do to dim the light of love. It may look like it when we get lost in our thinking. But when I was resting today, I saw like this beautiful, I don't know if it was a vase, but I saw this beautiful kind of shape. And it was almost like in our human experience, we cram or we push everything into this to give ourselves the best experience and so on. But what I was just saying was that this holding was love. And that no matter what experience or what kind of thinking that we create, love is holding every experience. And just to sit with that, there is nothing it can dim your light, your feeling of love. It really reminded me of one of the things when I came around the principles, I didn't want to hear them at the beginning. My head was so full of stuff, it was like, oh, not another thing to learn. But when I had my insight on Salt Spring Island, and then of course I wanted to find out more who was Sydney Banks, the only thing that interested me with Sid was he's Scottish and so am I. So we had that kind of kinship, and then I found out that he'd passed, so then I wasn't interested. So I had a lot of thinking, but one of the first things that really brought me to simplicity was when I heard him say, purity of thought is before the contamination of our human experience. And thought, the purity of thought, the purity of mind, and the purity of consciousness is soul. And soul is a feeling. So when you just rest in that for a moment, the purity of the feeling is unique to you, yet that feeling unites us all. That feeling is love, it's gentle, it's wise, it's honest. And love starts with you. You are love. And what really excites me is that in order for you to give love to others, you have to feel it yourself. So this feeling, you already know. So this is nothing new that we're pointing to. You already know the formless nature of love. you already know its intelligence. You already know what it's like to be wakened from your psychological numbness. It unites, it honors all souls. And I remember the moment that I love playing with words. And I love when I'm reminded, I don't say this all the time, but I love when we seem to be reminded in the moment to share something. And for me, soul, S-O-U-L, is sharing our universal love. And it's what we're all wanting. It's all what we're looking for. The balance and the harmony. And I had an experience the other day where it could have really both put Tony and I into a really fourth principle. And we are blessed to live on a farm, and we decided we'd take our dog around the farm. I remember having the key when I started off, and when I got home, I didn't have the key. So it had fallen somewhere on the farm. So my original thinking was to kick in, oh my God, what have I done? But what I realized was like the feeling it was coming with it wasn't right. It was off base. And so, interestingly enough, I'd said before, oh, I could go on walking longer. So I got my wish. I had to walk right back. But immediately what happened was that I had a click of where it was. And so we walked back a certain route, and then I decided I'd walk back the route that would come. So we were triple checking it. So what had happened, first of all, is I had this thought that, oh, I pulled out some weeds. Maybe it's falling off my hand. So it seemed to settle me a little bit. So I walked along and I was still looking. And then I went to the bit where it was, because there's a big field of sunflowers. And we'd stopped to take photographs of the sunflowers. And I got to the bit where I thought it was, and it wasn't there. And something just made me walk a few more steps. And there was the little owl key ring with the key. And my reason for sharing this is like in every moment, love is holding. I had the potential to really give myself a horrible experience in my thinking. But because I didn't follow it, I could feel almost like my thinking beginning to happen. But what came was like, well, this is what we could do if I don't find the key. Panic may have come in then, I don't know. But what I know in that moment was that I was held in a beautiful feeling. And it just reminded me again, it's not like I didn't have to do anything apart from just look at. Me overthinking is not going to help me find it. It's just going to give me an experience which will be very uncomfortable. So that was a blessing to see that my perfection model of my thinking that I used to have pre-principle was like, I should know better. But I just saw that this is the beauty of being in the moment. There's always something new to see. And that's a wonderful gift. That these three spiritual gifts of mind, thought, and consciousness allow us to be gifted in the moment with the new understanding of love. And if you are love, then it's a new understanding of you with nothing written in it, completely new. It's what Sid would say, virgin mind, completely new, with an awareness which will waken you from any psychological thinking. So for me, I saw that life actually flows through us. It doesn't happen to us. And that reminded me of that experience when I was walking around there. That at any moment we can simply forget who we are. But love is still holding.
What a beautiful feeling. I can listen to you all day, Steve. I love when you said simplicity. Love is so simple. And I love how Sid pointed towards how love and the principles are the same. Because what can we say about love? We can say that it's wise. It has an intelligence built into it. It flourishes. It blossoms in so many ways. So it's also creative. Look at all the different ways love shows up. When you said sunflowers, I was smiling because I have one right here. So love is also creative. It shows up in the love of art or love of nature or love of so many different things, music, people. And love is conscious. There's a consciousness behind love. It holds us, as Steve was saying. So it's a formless energy. And because it's formless, it's always there. Now, if I were to ask you right now to think about someone that you love, whether it be a partner or children or someone in your family or a friend or even your pet, if you go to the feeling of love inside of you right now, and I ask you the question, how do you know that you love? How do you know it? There's a knowing in love. And that knowing is not the intellect. I love my husband very much. It's not because he's this tall or this age or even all the wonderful things I could say about him. That's not why I love him. I just do. When we go to the feeling of love, there's a knowing. Knowing and consciousness is the same. We know something. Just like when we know beauty. Like Steve, I love being out in nature. And how do you describe to someone something that's beautiful? Why do you like that sunset? Well, it's the combination of the orange and the purple. No, it's not. You just love it. Again, there's a knowing in beauty. There's a knowing in love. There's even a knowing in truth. When I came across the principles about 10 years ago, I knew I had come home. I knew that my search was over. I knew that this was what I would be sharing with people for the rest of my life. It wasn't my intellect. There was a deep knowing. So the simplicity of love is the formless nature of love. It's always present. It doesn't matter for you who have children. It doesn't matter how your children behave. You love them anyway. You might get irritated in the moment or even angry. But the love that you have for them does not disappear just because you're angry. So when we look towards what changes, then it's something that comes and goes. But the beauty of love is that it's always present. It is the light that shines through all of our experiences. Now, how is that practical? What does that mean? It means that even experiences that we have that look horrible, where we feel like victims of life, what if we could see that that's also the face of love? What if we can start to recognize that behind the experience that we judge with our human intellects, but behind it is only love? What happens to the experience? The face of love is everywhere. I remember many years ago, probably 20 or 25 years ago, I was on a train, and across from me was a man. He was probably in his 50s. I'm in my 50s now. He was in his 50s, and he sat with a cardboard box, and I could see on the box that there was a train inside. And I was, mid-20s, and I thought to myself, I had this judgmental thought, wow, is this a grown man? Is he buying it for his son, or is it for himself? I had this short moment of being judgmental, and then it hit me so hard that, because I could see his face was full of love. Now, I don't know if it was for someone or if it was for himself, but I imagine that it was for him, that he was going home to build on a set. And right then it hit me. This is also the face of love. What is the universal characteristics when we love? Joy, peace, certainty. There's a universality of love that holds everyone and everything. But for many of us, we are conditioned to judge even love, because it comes in many sizes and shapes, and oh, there's somebody who's old, and should this person be with somebody that young, or all the judgment. That's not love. That's our intellect creating duality, analyzing. The three principles are pure love. When we look towards the formless loving nature that we are, there is no judgment there. There can't be. It's not possible when we are in that knowing of who we are. And then we can celebrate love in all its shapes and sizes and colors. We can celebrate loving art, loving nature, loving sizes and forms and colors. When we look towards the simplicity of love, compassion is one of the things that happens to people. Judgment falls away. And you see love everywhere. And you start seeing beauty everywhere. You start seeing truth everywhere. So when we came up with the title, it's all about love. Those were some of the things that were inspiring me, just to see this, the nature of love that is everywhere. Steve. You're muted, Steve.
Yeah, I I really did lose myself when you were speaking. And then I couldn't find and that's really what we're saying. We need to use our mute button more. Wow, there were so many beautiful things there, Natasha. It's You know, sometimes this beauty just stills me. And I've learned not to use words to overspeak it, overtalk it. But for this moment, I will, because we're all here together. And what came to mind was an experience that Natasha shared at the beginning. She'd heard Tony and I speak, and we were the first ones in the UK to work with the homeless and the three principles. And there was a group that we did, and we called it Less Stress, More Joy. And these people were at different stages. Some were in hostels, some were still waiting for accommodation. Some had been homeless before and living in a very uncomfortable state of mind that the same experience would happen again. So they were invited to come along. And then Tony and I, it was our very first course that we had done. And we'd broken it down into, right, 1 week we'll do mind, the next week we'll do consciousness, and then we'll do we'll do thought, then we'll do consciousness, and then we'll do thought again, and we'll bring mind in, and so on. And there was one guy in particular who we knew had a little bit of learning difficulties. And the only thing he said was at the end, because we'd said to him at the beginning, you know, we're going to be here from 7 o'clock. It'd be wonderful if you join us. If you have a mobile phone, please switch it off. So we said what we'd say to everyone. And then we asked them, what would you like from us? And the shock on their faces, because these were a group of people who were used to being told, you need to do this, you've got to do this. In order to get your money, in order to get accommodation, you have to do this. And here was people actually asking, what would you like from us? And what I remember from that is that even towards ourselves, we kind of do the same things. We're constantly giving ourselves a difficult time. But this guy in particular, just at the end, one of the guys had said, oh, I'd like coffee or tea and cookies. So we made sure that we kept our part of the bargain. And we had a break in between, and they had their refreshments. But at the end, if there was any left, this one guy who didn't say much at all came up and says, oh, anybody having those cookies? And we says, no. And he says, can I have them? And we says, of course. And he says, great, that's my supper. And he tipped up this white bag, which was really dirty, tipped them in, and off he went, really, really happy. So on the third session, when we were talking about mind, I was telling the story of where we lived in Brighton at the time, where we had a really big picture window and it overlooked the South Downs, which is Rolling National Park. And I was talking about one day when I was standing looking at the window, and whatever way the wind was coming down, I could see that there was long grasses being blown, but other parts of it wasn't. And that really fascinated me, that they were almost side by side, but they were having two different experiences going on. And then I saw that there was someone actually walking up the hill. And as I watched them, of course, they got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I saw that there was actually seagulls. And then I noticed the clouds. And what I was saying was that all this made up the oneness of life. And this one guy who didn't say anything jumped to the front of his seat and says, can I say something? So Tony says, please do. He says, every time I hear you guys speak, I just think there's goodness inside of me. And there's goodness inside of you. And he went around everybody in the group. He says, and if we just focus on that goodness, wouldn't this world be a better place? And then sat back. And Tony and I just looked at one another. We were like, do you want to come and sit on this seat now? And I'll come and sit in yours. Because the feeling in that room was absolutely beautiful. And there was such a beautiful innocence where he was seeing that from. And that man has a so-called learning disability. But yet he was profound in that moment. Love woke him up in such a way that we heard beyond what he was saying. And it echoed inside of us. And that group took a new energy then. The people were, you could see their eyes just opening up and things started happening. And that's how we learn about consciousness at play. That consciousness wasn't, you could talk about it, you could explain it, but when the feeling of consciousness comes in and wakes you up, that moment is blessed with love. And then the next maybe half hour, one of the guys wanted to start arguing because he was in his thinking. So he was coming back with, and you could see him getting restless. Now, he had a big story and a big thing going on with his family. So you could see why he maybe thought he was lost in love. But then this one guy stepped forward again and he says, and it's when one of the Star Wars movies had just come out, and he went, I haven't watched that, he says, for years. He says, but we're just playing a big game of Star Wars. There's dark and there's light. He says, and we give all this darkness all the power and we think it controls us, but it's not. He says, it's just the light. He says, we need to look towards what the Jedis are telling us. Now, I, at that point, never watched Star Wars. I wasn't interested in watching Star Wars, but I got what he was saying. So what we're saying is, it's not in the words. It really is in this feeling. And this guy, we wanted to get funding to be able to roll this out nationally, or at least within the housing association who was in Brighton, and train all the staff so that everyone who came into this charity, they were seen through the eyes of the principals. So we asked, would he go along and speak to the human resources people and the directors and so on. And so when they asked him how had his life changed, and he says, well, I went to Eastbourne, which is along the coast. It's about maybe an hour on the bus. He says, and I decided one morning, I'm bored. He says, and someone says, get yourself on the bus. So I went on the bus to Eastbourne and I got off. He said, and for at least a good half hour, I walked about with nothing completely on my mind. And Tony was in that meeting and he went into his own thinking by saying, no, tell him about what else you're doing. Because he started going around the different supermarkets of when they were having, what days they had special offers on. And then he started collecting it and doing a write-up so that the charity could put out to other homeless people, if you go to this day, you'll get the bargains and so on. That's how wisdom was waking him up. And again, it really taught us, like, we don't know how love dances with you. And that was real simplicity in motion. He had nothing other than a good quality of living. And one of the things that I loved, eventually, I didn't at the beginning when I used to hear Sid say, just live a good life. Just get on with your family, get on with your friends, just live a good life. And in my thinking state, I would say, it's okay you saying that. You've been around these things for years. But of course, I was looking at his version of a good life. And that's where innocently we get lost. When it looks like love belongs to somebody else, or peace of mind belongs in a situation, then it looks like that feeling of love is something it needs to be sought after, it needs to be looked after. But if it's a feeling that it's innate inside of you from birth, the searching can stop right now. You are what you are looking for. You've been there all along. Yet innocently, like us all, we believed that there was a world outside of us. And we gave our life that purpose. But what if the purpose was simply to love? To understand you as a loving being? What if that was the only thing that we were all back here for? Is to love. And the thing that I never, in all my studies and trainings and that I had done, when I heard Dr. Bill Pettit say this for the first time, it really echoed deeply because it was true for me. In all my days of studying psychology, I was never taught about real mental health. It was the dysfunction. It was the sickness. And then when I started seeing, if it's true that we are all love in action, then that means everyone on this planet. And instead of questioning it, I got to see in the moment that in my moments of believing that I wasn't, I had the craziest thoughts that led to situations that I hoped that I would never take again. So I see the innocence. And that was something that I didn't see before. There had to be a reason. But maybe the reason is we've simply misunderstood the role of thought and believed that because we're the thinker and have a thought, we have to believe it. But what if that's not true? Maybe you can have any thought that you want. And it's powerless until you put the power into it. And that's the same as love. But yet, the divine nature of who we are, the divine nature of these principles, is the love we're pointing to here. And when Tasha said at the beginning, well, there's a beautiful feeling, my ego could sit here and say, yeah, check me. But that wasn't just me, that was you too. There's consciousness. And some people might be sat here not really connecting to what we're saying or what do you mean by this part, but yet resting in that beautiful feeling. And that's what I got to see for myself, was that I can have the crisis of thinkers at time and still be in a beautiful feeling. It got proved to me again when I lost the keys. So simplicity really is a beautiful friend. And I love that feeling of that you are what you've been looking for. Tasha?
I was reflecting on, or what came up in me was when you see someone who's in love, the face, it reminds you of the love that you have inside. In that moment when you look at someone and you see their faces lit up. Why do we love being around people who are in love? Because we're seeing us, we're seeing ourselves. We're getting in touch with that feeling that's who we are. And we can be in love with many different things. It doesn't even have to be a person. We can be in love with doing our art. I remember I started playing golf many years ago, 20 years ago. I loved playing golf. And every time I'd go out, very often I'd be by myself, I'd go out. And then when I was on my way home, I'd very often call my mom. And she said, "What are you doing? Your voice sounds like you're in love." I said, "I am." She said, "With what? Or with who?" I said, "With golf." But it wasn't golf. It was that when I was out there, I was so present with life. If you want to hit a little ball that size, you cannot be in your thinking because you won't hit it. So when you drop out of your thinking and into life, you fall in love. It can be with gardening, it can be with tennis, it can be with fishing. It doesn't matter. Love expresses itself in so many ways. And notice how fascinated we are with people who are doing what they love. You're going along on the street and there's a street artist who's painting on the sidewalk or something. Or some street artists who are playing music. And they're just enjoying themselves. And you stand and you look at them and you feel the joy inside of you. We are reminded every day, everywhere around us, that love exists. I was speaking with a client a few days ago who just recently lost her husband. And of course she was very sad. And then for a moment, something I said made her smile. And I said, "What was that?" And that light, you can see it in people's faces when love breaks through. And it doesn't matter how thick the clouds are. When they part, light will shine through. I love the old metaphor that it doesn't matter how many years a cave has been dark. If you go in and you turn on a matchstick in there, it'll light up immediately. That's hope right there. All it takes is a break through the constant, incessant thinking that so many people have. When the light comes through, hope comes through. And hope and love is the same. The hope that I am okay. The hope that even if my body is damaged, I am not damaged. The hope that even if I don't love right now, it's who I am. We're taught to look for it outside of ourselves. You have to find a partner or a job that you love or whatever you love. So we look outside of ourselves instead of turning around and looking within. It's possible to love anything when you know who you are. If I look out there, it's going to be difficult. There's so many possibilities and so many rejections. When I come home to who I am, when I fall in love, fall out of the intellect and into love, then I don't need anything out there. When I don't need my husband to give me love, when it's not on his shoulders, it's not his responsibility to give it to me, because I know I am love. And he knows that he is love. Then we are two free, loving people who simply enjoy celebrating life together. It takes a lot of stress out of a relationship when it's not on the other person's shoulders to give love. Doesn't mean that we don't do loving things toward each other. I'm going for a long drive tomorrow and I know my husband has just washed my car and put petrol on it, gotten it ready. It's an expression of love. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. I love that. I love that freedom and that creative expression of how to show love that comes just from being. in love. So seeing love as this formless constant in our lives, nothing to get, nothing to starve for. Find it inside, where it is. Sometimes people say, well, you have to love yourself. Well, it's kind of like saying to the wave that it should find the ocean. It is ocean. We are love. When we see that more deeply and we start seeing that even things that happen in our lives that in the moment doesn't look like love, and there's a lot of that going on, what if we could see it as an expression of love anyway? What if that could be turned around? What would happen if we saw love all around? A neighbor that we don't like, the face of love. Our boss that's hard on us, the face of love. War, the face of love. How's that possible? It's only possible when we fall out of our intellect and into love. From the point of view of the personal and the intellect, there's good and bad, there's evil and saint. But from love's perspective, there is only love in its many forms and colors and experiences. So coming back to something that Steve said from the beginning is that love is the container that holds everything. It's the light out of which everything arises. Every experience arises from that light and love. We just don't see it because we judge it. But when we fall out of that judgment, we fall back into love and we start seeing with new eyes all the love that's around us. One of the things that I hear most often from clients when they start seeing more clearly by knowing who they are is, wow, that tree is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, look at that, the way that the sun goes through those leaves, or look at how that animal's moving, or we start to see life through love, and it's beautiful. It really is my favorite topic to speak about, because when we see who we are, when we understand that love is all around us and it's all about love, then we live more aligned with that love. And life becomes loving, caring, compassionate, hopeful. And notice how that when we are in love, we want to share it. It's a natural expression that when we are filled up with something that's good, we want to give it away. And so that movement out, that generosity of love, of spirit, of help, or in whatever way it comes out, that is exactly what love is. It's generous, it's giving. One of the things that I see often is when people get affected by the principles, they want to give it away. How can I share it? Tell me, how do I share this with people? How do I speak with my children about it? How do I share it with my partner? It's very easy. You don't have to say a word. You demonstrate it. You beam it. You are it. People don't have to hear me speak about love to see that I'm in love. It's obvious. So the best way we can share is simply to be present. Be in love. And out of that love, something will occur to you. A touch, something to say, getting a cup of tea for someone, letting someone go in the line in front of you in the supermarket. It's so beautiful to see that love guides us. It has an intelligence built into it. Yeah. That was what came up. This was the love that came up in me right now, Steve. Do you want to say some more, or do you want to open up to the group?
I think I might just say just a little thing which was coming, and this was really helpful for me when I started seeing this, because I think we had get in, like, I think globally we'd get into a mindset that love does look a certain way. So in order for me to be in a relationship and be happy, that worked before, so I'll just do it again. And after a while, that becomes stuck. It maybe doesn't flow, and we get to understand of the different consciousness, that we're not always separate realities and so on. So for me, what was just coming was that really the power of now, power of the moment, where love is touching you for the first time. That's where we're pointing to. That's your health. That's how some things. I was out for a walk yesterday and get talking to this guy who was in senior years, and he was telling me, and he's originally from this part of the world, so he was telling me what it's like and how things had changed, and as I was walking along, I was thinking, gosh, love is ever changing. But yet at the same time, it put me in mind of when I was in India doing a retreat, and we'd gone to one of the villages, and someone pointed to the Himalayas, and you could see this little trick of waterfall coming over, and that was the same water that was going past us, making its way to the ocean. And there's an energy there. And you will not see that same piece of water twice. So just be aware when we're talking about thought, it's original thought that we're talking about. And it's what I said at the beginning. You know that feeling. It might have been, as Natasha was saying, you might have, for those who are children, or your relationship, or you seeing a flower opening up for the first time. I kind of thought Natasha may have been reading my mind when she started talking about the tree, because I was just looking at the trees on the farm and being really in here and going with the cycle of the farmers. You actually get to see that it's not that we have to be like nature. We are nature. Our innate being is the same as nature. We are the same energy. So that helps me to see when I just walk around, the sun sets just behind us, and you never see the same sunset twice. So we will never have the same thought twice when it's divine in nature. So anytime that you feel anything other than that, it's a simple reminder of yourself. I'm the thinker at the moment. And my thinking has taken me away from who I am. Or it looks that way. Because still held in amongst all that thinking. I love when Natasha spoke about is your knowing. And just like that river coming over as a waterfall, which started off as the rain coming down, filling that piece of land up, coming down, going past, and they had blocked it for a certain part where Some of the people who lived there would go and wash their clothes in one part. So everything has the beautiful flow when you let it do what it's designed to do. And love designs you, not you designing it, but yet you get to design a world where you can be the best version of you in any given moment. Even when you forget that, it will write you again.